Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So as you can tell by the title of today's video, we will be talking about a new massive winter storm that is rolling into the western United States and will be bringing very heavy snow, very heavy rain across a good portion of the United States, pretty much coast to coast. So I do know, I realize I've been calling a lot of storms massive for the past few videos, but the matter of fact is that we are stuck in this very, very active pattern, and that's usually the case that we see a brief period, 1 to 2 weeks, where we just have storm after storm after storm, and they're all really potentially, and I mean, they will be in this case, very strong, very massive, and very impactful. And then, there's a week or two of quietness, so it's not that they're, nicely spread out throughout the month. So yes, we are in a very active period. This storm will be bigger than the one we've seen in terms of its snow impacts and in terms of its general population impacted by the weather, as this system that we saw here pretty much all avoided completely the Northeast, Pennsylvania, Ohio. There were some showers, maybe, the warm weather, some strong winds, but with its direct impacts, it didn't impact as many people as this one will. I do want to say one good thing about this incoming storm system, that is, the new one. There won't be nearly as much severe weather with it. Obviously, it was a very scary night and a very, not a good event that occurred yesterday across the southern United States, across Oklahoma, Dallas, or Texas. I was just looking at there and I just saw Dallas, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, across the south with the severe weather. It doesn't seem that the event, this up next storm, will have as much severe weather, though there definitely will be some, not to that same extent. So yeah, this one is probably going to be the biggest one so far. And yeah, I mean, you saw the ones we've already seen have been very impactful, very potent. If you look at the National Weather Service map, you can see all the warnings that are still and watches that are still put up because of the strong winds this system is bringing as it moves out into southern Canada. Notice these right here, these advisories, these warnings, these watches, these are all because of the new system that we're going to be talking about in today's video. And the other thing is I want to outline with these systems is, look at the radar right now. So this is the storm that we were just talking about. This may not look too impressive. Yesterday it certainly looked a lot more impressive, but you may look at this and say to yourself, well, it's just a little bit of the northern United States being impacted by this. It's pretty much out of here, but you got to take it, into account the indirect impacts, and you're to take a look at the winds. For example, in my area, this system's way north of our area at this point, but we are still getting some incredible winds. The last time I remember seeing such strong winds, I mean, it's been at least a year, I think, since we've seen a high wind warning here across my area, and that could also be destructive and damaging some of these wind gusts. Thankfully, my area is good, at least my, our house and everything, but there definitely is damage that is being done because of these winds. So that's another thing to keep in mind with these. The radar isn't the whole story. So yeah, I've been talking a lot, but I wanted to give a brief background kind of on what to expect and just kind of a few important things. So let's start looking at these weather models and see how this system looks. So again, we already have a lot of action going on across the United States. We have this fierce clipper that is across the northern, extreme northern United States, but mainly across southern Canada, bringing snow and very strong winds. All of these warnings here, which are high wind warnings, are associated with that system. So again, on the radar, all these areas look very nice and quiet, but in reality, they're getting impacted very significantly by that clipper. You can see wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour. That's severe thunderstorm type wind gusts right there. So that's definitely not something you want to see across such a large area. Thankfully, that system does weaken. You can see its millibars do jump up pretty quickly. The snow does spread maybe into extreme portions of northern United States, but mainly impacting Manitoba, Saskatchewan, so Brandon, Winnipeg, Saskatoon got some snow. Those cities are gonna, pick up a little bit of snow from that, but not a massive event. And notice that the system that we were dealing with yesterday in the past few days, the severe weather maker, really zooms out of here quickly, and that's good. I mean, we want to get rid of that guy at this point. He's done enough damage, so bye-bye. But do note that the next system we have is starting to move in as early as tomorrow, and its impacts are already kind of being felt. You can see some showers, Although that's kind of the remnants of this earlier storm. So yeah, it's almost impossible to kind of directly cut off where exactly these new systems start because of just how close together they are and how frequently and how fast they're moving. So notice though, clearly we have an explosion of precipitation coverage across the western United States as early as, again, Sunday. By Monday, this thing is full-fledged. Notice here's the time, 6 a.m. November 7th. So that is our Monday. Notice the Sierra Nevada starting to get some very heavy snow, but this is still not the bulk of it. The bulk of the precipitation is still offshore. This one will be a massive precip maker. Notice it's impacting areas, all the way across southeastern Canada, southwestern Canada, all the way to the southwestern United States. So it's a long stretch system. But notice we have several pieces to this. So by election day, November 8th, so this upcoming Tuesday, notice that in the morning, a lot of people will probably be out and about, voting, doing things like that. So definitely an impactful one. You can see, especially for California and Nevada, we have this extreme surge of moisture that plows into the southwest. Earlier, some models were showing that the first waves of the moisture might develop into their own system further across the north. That seems to have kind of gone away, right? So you can see that. Notice there are some showers, some snow over here, but the main show seems to be the second piece over here, which will again bring a lot of precipitation for these areas. Just look at that. That's actually not bad news for these areas. Obviously, a little bit too much in certain areas isn't good, especially across burn scars and what's not. Some flash flooding, mudslides may occur, but a lot of these areas are dry. Lake Mead sitting right there, Lake Oroville, Shasta Dam. So a lot of these areas need that water, and so that's definitely not a bad thing for those folks. And a lot of people are going to be viewing this first storm positively. So that's the silver lining to this. I do also want to mention that if you live across the rest of the United States, you can see all these millibars are relatively packed. It's not a calm pattern. Notice we have a strong. That's a very strong high pressure, 1044. That is pretty much as strong as it get right there. So that high pressure is going to be really driving a lot of winds across the northeast from the north, across the southern United States from the east, across the central United States from the south. So a lot of areas will be seeing windy conditions. But for the plains, yet again, another system from the west combined with this high pressure means very strong southerly winds, and the temperatures will be rebounding. So there won't be a classic cool down after this fierce storm that we saw. Typically, when we see such strong winds, I always just my mind instantly just kind of thinks it will be very cold tomorrow, and this is kind of the one. It will be chillier, 10 to 15 degrees cooler than what we saw, but what we saw was 70, still above average right now. And if you were to take a look at the anomalies, you could see a lot of cold air to the north. Some of these anomalies are absolutely terrific. Probably, terrific from the meteorological standpoint. Definitely not good for the folks living there, but the anomalies on the warm side are also very, very, very impressive. So again, the warm pattern continues across a lot of the United States there. I'm sure a lot of folks have no problem with that. I know I'm going to take advantage of these nice days in my garden and do the last things that need to be done. And notice that this system really brings in a lot of moisture for the southwest, as I've been saying. And we continue to see this system move through Utah into Arizona. This is now Wednesday. This is Wednesday during the afternoon. This is Wednesday in the evening, so 6 p.m. their Central Standard Time, so around 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Time. And notice that as I push this forward, we start seeing some precipitation develop across Minnesota, Wisconsin, right? So this is now early Thursday, pretty much we're on the cusp of Wednesday and Thursday, 12 a.m. Central Standard Time. And notice that, again, we have a lot of strong winds from the south, so it's pumping a lot of moisture. The system has a lot of already moisture with it from the Pacific. And this is where the system moves out into the plains and starts quickly deepening its millibars. You can see it's 998, 997 right there. Very heavy snow is most likely poised to develop by Thursday during the daytime and morning time across the Dakotas, Wyoming. Again, another blast of heavy snow for those areas. You can see South Dakota, Nebraska. There could be a decent icing slot as well. You can see quite a bit of pinks and purple there. That's definitely something to watch for. And notice that this system doesn't have as explosive of a cold front initially with it. So a lot of those impacts may be mitigated in terms of, the severe weather side, though it definitely will have its own punch. And look at some of those snowfall rates. Incredible potentially across the Dakotas and into portions of Minnesota. Again, a little bit of an icing threat there. So yes, this could develop into probably the biggest snowstorm yet yet. No, definitely the biggest snowstorm yet for the plains, and arguably, one of the bigger ones for even the mountainous areas as well, especially for, again, the early phases across California and Nevada. And you can see that this system starts moving away a bit quicker. That's also another thing I want to note, that it's initially a pretty slow moving storm. You can see right there, it's moving along, but it's definitely taking its time. So by late Thursday, early Friday, it still has snowing very heavily across pretty much all of South Dakota now, all of North Dakota. And again, the exact track of this is still yet to be determined. I'll show you different models. Some show this further toward the north, towards the south. Some show it a bit quicker moving. There are some differences. Now, notice that as I put this forward, again, it continues losing some millibars, so the winds with this will be pretty strong, especially on that snowy side. There could be some, maybe some scattered blizzard warnings being posted there. Definitely something that we will have to wait for and see what the National Weather Service issues. Notice though, the cold front side of this isn't too impressive. Now, do note that there could be some sort of tropical storm activity going on across southeastern Florida or the southeastern United States. I was specifically ignoring that. I saw it right there, obviously, but I didn't want to address it till now. So as this system moves in across the United States, it does have a cold front, except it's mainly kind of a dry line. It's not necessarily filled with precip and moisture. This system, whatever it does, again, the GFS shows it pretty strongly right here, 982 millibars. Maybe even some sort of a hurricane. It's tough to tell. The waters are still definitely warm. We're still in hurricane season, even though it's already, November. But notice that as the system pulls away into Canada, obviously the snow it brings with it into maybe, Minnesota, the Arrowhead, that's definitely something to note still. But it weakens, but look what it does. It kind of takes up the remnants of whatever's going on here, which again, it's a bit far out to say precisely what is going on here, and this is just one model this depiction, but there could be at least most likely a giant blob, a slug of moisture here that gets flung into the northeast, and you can see there could be, as a result, quite a bit of heavy rain, maybe some severe weather across these areas. Not necessarily the worst thing. Again, these areas are pretty dry, especially New England, but we'll have to monitor that, especially if there is a stronger storm that develops from that. And yeah, so again, that's what I meant by this system being coast to coast, right? It takes through much of the United States, and it ends up impacting the Northeast with some potentially very, very heavy rain. Unlike this previous one, you can see behind this system, we see quite a bit of chilly air that spills into the Great Lakes. We see the lake effect machine getting turned on, and it seems as if this cool air may be sustained for quite a while as the pattern calms down. So this cool air kind of falls into the United States and just kind of settles there for a while. There are some model indications that there could be more of a southern storm starting to develop. Obviously, this would be a incredibly far a southern snowstorm across these areas. Again, this is far out. We don't want to get it too caught up on this, but since I'm already here, let me show you this again. Another strong high pressure indicating very cold air here. But so, if such cold air would move into the central United States, we could expect that there would be some sort of a storm system across middle of November, being more of a snowmaker further south. How far south? Again, would this happen? It's a bit ridiculous to try to forecast this, but you can see that the model is indicating a lot of cold for November. And just to show you some of this cold air, let's take this back. So again, there's our storm, right? The one that I'm talking about, this big one. There's that snowstorm across the plains, but behind it, there's a lot of cold air that spills in. You can see pretty far south into the United States. So that's something, again, indirectly kind of the system that's going to leave a lot of folks with chillier temperatures. Across the south, this is going to feel more of it as a nice, pleasant kind of cool down. Further towards the north, more of the kind of barbaric cold, if you will. I mean, that may not look impressive, but if I take a look at this, especially if you get a good snowpack there, we could see amounts or temperatures that are definitely approaching, the single digits, if not colder. And this seems to be long lasting. If you're to take a look at the future outlook, you can see some of this cold goes pretty far south into Texas, Oklahoma. That would definitely be scary if this was January or February, kind of bringing, I guess a lot of people are remembering the 2021 outbreak of cold across the deep south. Again, it's November, so this wouldn't be too bad, though definitely frost and freezes will develop, and that's assuming that there's snowpack here, because remember, there could be that system that the GFS shows here bringing that snow. So, again, don't get too caught up with that. But notice what we do see is reinforcing shots of cool air coming in. So that could upend kind of our warm pattern and start a new period of snow and cold and different type of weather here. So yeah, I showed you a lot more than I was originally going to. I just wanted to focus on this storm, which is already a lot. So let's do that. And let me show you the total snowfall from the GFS and how much snow it shows. Again, with the slow moving characteristic of this system, the amounts would be impressive. This one shows we're anywhere from a foot plus across these areas. I'll just leave it at that for now because, again, it's still a little bit far out. But yes, this would be a most likely impressive snowmaker. Across the west, some of these amounts are going to be borderline legendary, especially across the Sierra. 1 to 5 feet of snow, generally speaking. Obviously, higher elevations picking up more. And obviously, if I put this out further, you can see that second system could also be bringing some snow across the deep south. Whether or not that happens, not the deep south, the south central United States. Whether or not that happens, I don't know, and I don't really want to know at this point because it's just too much to handle. But notice lake effect snows will also be going on after that cool air, after that system passes. And the moisture, especially across the northeast from the system, could be impressive and definitely something they would want. And of course, the southwest. That is just one model. Let's go back now and take a look at the Canadian. I'll try going through these a lot quicker than what I did with the GFS because now I explained to you the general setup of the system. So let's just now see how the models kind of differ. So again, those are our two systems going on right now. That fierce clipper, that system that brought the severe weather, they're out of here pretty quickly. They either weaken or move out. There's our big system. Again, Sunday, Monday, you could see a lot of heavy snow across the northwest, across the southwest, California, picking up a lot of moisture that they quite frankly need. Again, by Wednesday, Tuesday, we already have some sort of snow, rain developing across the northern United States, but it's not intense, it's light. Notice the Canadian also shows this tropical system here across the southeast that we'll have to monitor. You can see the Canadian latest model run does not advertise as heavy of a snowstorm. It does show something, right? Obviously some snowfall amount. So if you recall, the GFS developed this into a monster. The Canadian, not so much. However, definitely shows that cold front picking up that precip from that tropical system and swinging it across the northeast. So that's still something that's consistent with the GFS. Do note another area that they agree on is the cold air that follows. The Canadian obviously shows some ridiculously cold air, which I don't think it will be quite that cold. The Canadian tends to do that, and you can see it shows still a pattern that remains pretty active afterwards, maybe also hinting at some sort of a storm system further south. So in terms of the precipitation amounts from the Canadian, it shows a lot less snowfall for these areas. Still some, you can see it's definitely there. Still a lot of snow for the southwest, so that's consistent. A little bit further north, though. You can see it's not as much for New Mexico, Arizona. In terms of rainfall, it shows a bit more for the northeast and the southeast with that tropical disturbance. But overall, there are, some, the overall agreement is definitely there. I do also want to note that for models like the GFS, it hasn't been too terribly consistent with the system. If I were to show you, say, yesterday's model run at the same time frame yesterday, so if I were to record this evening video, you can see this is what it showed. It showed a system more similar to what the Canadian is currently showing. So the GFS has trended towards a stronger, more impactful system over the past 24 hours. A third model I want to show you now is a European that has been probably the most consistent with this third system. So again, here we have two systems, a clipper and that storm that brought that severe weather. They're going to move out of here. Obviously still strong winds and a little bit of cold air for the northern United States. They're moving in residually for the next few days. But again, this is what catches our attention. Extreme snowfall rates. I mean, impressive across the Sierra. I'll show you the snowfall amounts there that are forecasted. Notice though, it kind of comes in two parts. Here's that first wave. You can see it kind of moves out further across the prairies of Canada. Definitely could be some impactful snow, maybe some showers and storms developing across the northern United States. And then there's that second part, which again could be a lot more impressive and impactful. And you can see the European, similar to the GFS, takes it out actually in a very similar track, so that's good news that they have some sort of confidence. You could see maybe a slightly bit more northern track. Very strong system, maybe more severe weather with the European. A lot of heavy snow on the backside of this. Yeah, so this thing develops into a monster similar to what the GFS shows. And again, when the European and GFS agree, that tends to make me favor that scenario as opposed to the Canadian, which kind of shows that scenario by itself. But again, something to keep in mind, there are some still disagreements with this. And notice the key difference is here that the European doesn't really show this tropical system develop in that same fashion that the GFS. It takes it more towards the Gulf and kind of gets lost, so there isn't as big of a threat for that storm to be causing, the winds and damaging impacts from, the storm itself. But there still is a lot of moisture here that could be brought up by this system, and you can see the European does try to do that, and it does end up bringing some still pretty heavy rain for the Northeast, just not as directly impactful as other ones. Another thing they agree on is the cold air that follows this. So pretty much all models show that, Canadian, GFS, and European. And you can see that the European, it does show modest cold at first. Again, lake effects being turned on, going on. But it does seem that the European, like other models, starts showing reinforcing shots of chillier air. You could see keeping that pattern cooler, and it keeps the pattern active. Maybe some sort of a system starting to brew here in the long range. That is far out. We'll worry about that once we get there. Notice the total accumulated precipitation from this system is obviously impressive across the Southwest, probably the most impressive. Obviously across the northern plains as well, and across the Northeast potentially too. Though you could see the European keeps a lot of that moisture off the coast. So that's something, another difference that is kind of running with the model. So again, 3 areas of interest here, right? The Southwest here, you can see the European kind of nicely puts this right here, a lot of moisture, another area of heavy moisture, and potentially a third area of concern with moisture. So 3 kind of areas, regions that could be majorly impacted by this. But again, even areas right here where a lot of precipitation doesn't seem likely, you will get impacted by this with most likely strong southerly winds, probably red flag warnings, so increased fire danger, and nice warm weather that you could probably take advantage of. So that's definitely something nice, especially after all that activity you guys got there for the past few storms. So European model total snowfall is also very, very, very impressive. Probably even more impressive than GFS across some of the northern plains areas here. You could see up to 30 inches. I wouldn't be surprised, if you could see up to 2 feet of snow with that system if it pans out the way that European and GFS show. Again, at this point, you could see the European shows it a bit further towards the north than the GFS. These differences will continue for the next few days as these models refine their forecasts. Notice that as I look on the west coast, we see again a very strong snowfall amounts. Almost all models show that the Sierra Nevada are going to be the most impacted by this in terms of kind of their disproportionate snowfall. Though, let me go back and show you some of these snowfall forecasts now because they are truly impressive. So let's go on Essential kind of Sierra here. Notice obviously the Sacramento Weather Office is already, making many headlines about this because, well, quite frankly, this is going to be a ridiculous system pretty early on in the season. So 1 to 4 feet of snow above the 4,000 foot elevation range. Dangerous mountain travel, if not just nearly impossible. Obviously, you need to put on chains and whatnot. There's going to be strong winds, whiteout conditions, so it's going to be a nightmare these next few days here. And these amounts of snow that could be here are ridiculous. Look, 36 to 48, 36 to 48, right? So a lot of these areas potentially across even higher elevations seeing more. Again, this isn't probably a record-breaking system. You've seen these amounts before, but it's one of the big ones that happen probably just in the scope of just a few times a year, especially during La Nina years where these systems typically don't, or these years don't typically support many of these storms. Hopefully, though, we do see more of these as, a lot of these areas are definitely wanting this. So, again, this is the Hanford, California office. You can see they're also showing the various impacts here. Projected precipitation, obviously pretty significant, even in terms of the rain for the southern areas, the lower southern areas in terms of elevation. And you can see even the southern Sierra picking up a lot of snow. Even the mountains right just northwest of Los Angeles will be picking up some snow, so Big Bear Lake areas like that. You can see this is the southwest kind of area. San Diego forecast, a lot of rain here, more even than the northern areas. Snowfall forecast, you can see a lot of snow for these areas here. So again, a lot less, obviously, coverage because the mountains are smaller and whatnot, but still a lot of snow. And even, if you go out into Nevada, there's going to be a lot of snow here. And you can see that there's a winter storm watch as of now, the probability maps, so, showing the different, kind of the contrast, showing how quickly this varies from a lot less confidence to a lot more confidence. And if you're to take a look at some of these areas, let's just take a look at the winter storm watch and see what it says. Again, there won't be 4 feet of snow, but there could be up to 2 feet across the higher elevations. And this thing is something that I want to point out here. You can see this system will be fairly slow moving with snow accumulations possibly extending to Tuesday. And this right here. For this time of the year, the amount of snowfall is considerable and can produce greater impacts than what potential snow amounts suggest as people are still preparing for winter. So again, 2 to 6 inch of entering, the peak of winter may not be something, maybe something you just laugh at. But, in November it could catch a lot of people off guard. And even in wintertime, such a storm would be impressive. So Yeah, a lot of talking, a lot of stuff I had to cover, but hopefully you got a better idea of what's coming up. And yeah, there's gonna be a lot more of these videos I'll be making. This pattern seems to be getting insane. Hopefully though, again, there are some signs that will be chilling down, but and look, the Grand Tetons here across Yellowstone also will be seeing a lot of snow from this system. Let's just click on a random area right there, and you can see the end of the winter storm warning that is going on from the previous system, but there probably will be a winter storm warning that is issued for the new system. As you can see, these amounts will be impressive. So yeah, a lot of snow these areas are getting definitely above average for this time of the year. Hopefully this continues. They need that snow. All right, guys, that is basically it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. And actually, before I go, let me just look at an Oklahoma weather office just to confirm. Yeah, you can see the temperatures are going to be rebounding nicely. So, mostly cloudy, partly sunny. Nice little break in terms of the crazy weather we've been seeing. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. See ya. Bye.